Good morning and welcome to my podcast. You have joined me to fight CPS with Bob Pace. I'm your host this morning. It's Sunday, the 15th of September, and I want to welcome you all from around the world. Yes, it's a live podcast, and if you have an internet connection and you found me on Facebook fighting CPS, I'd love to have you. I'd love to have you. I am let me see. Who else is here? Good. Good morning. You are live.
Good morning.
You're live with me this morning. I've just been welcome all the people. For you all that don't know who's on the other phone right now, that is Faye. Faye is from Richmond, Kentucky, and she's a single mom trying to get guardianship of her special needs son. And she has some good news. She shared it with me 2 days ago. That after 12 years of hard work, she finally has got her case reopened, and there might be a possibility of establishing some type of connection with her long lost daughter. Anyway, I want to go over how to interact with this podcast. There are several ways. There's 4 ways. The first way is just by being in the room, and listening and taking notes and everything. So, let's see here. Also, if you look down below, there are you can subscribe to my podcast and get notifications by clicking the notification. Also, this room has emojis, and you can give thumbs up, and you can give hearts, you can give smiley faces, and so
You can also give stars.
yes. Also, you can give stars. Something I just found out the other day. There are stars that you can give, and that it's great. It's much appreciated. I really do appreciate everybody that participates in this podcast, because with this podcast I look to is an interactive podcast, meaning that you're a part of it, and so I'm here to help you, and Faye's here to help you as well, and so um, that is one way, just by um, being a participant in the podcast. Now, if you want to ask questions or make comments, there is a way you can do that on my podcast. I'm going to put it up on the screen so you can see it, and I'll blow it up a little bit so you can see it's a little bigger. Now, if you have a question or you have a comment, keep it to CPS. We need to know. And for some of you that don't know what CPS is, I call it the Child Protection System. There's a lot of definitions of CPS, but what it is the branch of social services that our government has entrusted social workers to protect our children from neglect and abuse, and also help out families in need. So if you're really in need of food or clothing, or you need housing or education or medical or even a job, social service is here to help you. The CPS system is here to help you. Now, these social workers will investigate your case, and if they deem necessary, they may break apart your family and take your kids in temporary custody. But lately, a lot of that has changed. The philosophy of CPS isn't what it's made out to be. And um, when they do that, they're supposed to do family reunification. So not only are you supposed to help families in need, but they're also supposed to do family reunification. The sole purpose, I shouldn't say this, one of the purposes is to protect their children from neglect and abuse. And that goes on daily. There are children being killed, there are children being injured across the world, across the United States. And the social workers are entrusted to save our children, to keep our children uh, safe. It's really important that is. Now, when you type in a comment or a question, please show your name. Now, a lot of you say, well, I have a name. Well, some of the names you have are great names, but it's hard to address somebody as jumping hippopotamus or psychedelic butterflies or gone with the wind. Those are great expressions and names, but try to have a name like Peggy or Kathy or Mary or Sue or Bob or Bill or Jim. One of those simple names there. So just put your first name only, then put your city, and if you don't want to give the city, the county that you're in, the county where the incident happened, and of course the state. That tells me geographically where there's pockets of good CPS or bad CPS. Also, for all the worldwide listeners in other countries, I love hearing from you too. So put your city and your country, your city and country. There's been about 13 countries so far. I've had Bangladesh, New Delhi, India. I even had somebody from the Middle East, but it was all in Arabic and I couldn't translate. So I have no idea what country it is in the Middle East. Then drop on over to Africa. I've had several countries there. I've had Liberia on the west coast, North Africa, Liberia. And then down south, I've had the province on the west coast of South Africa. Then a little small country in the center of Africa, Rwanda, which is near Lake Victoria. And then I have to the east is Mozambique, above South Africa, down from Somalia, across from Madagascar, the island of Madagascar, on the east coast of Africa. Then we drop over to Europe. I've had England, Scotland, Wales, and Denmark and Sweden. Then across the pond to North America, I've had several of the provinces in Canada. And I've had all the 50 states in the United States, including Washington, D.C. They've either texted or called in. So uh, it's it seems everybody seems to have a common uh, problem with CPS, and that is they are not uh, for your family. They're not for your children. They are very corrupt. And if it's something you're hearing for the first time, I'm sorry. Now, I know there are good CPS workers out there. I've met 3 of them on my show. And the same thing goes for policemen. The policemen have been corrupt, but I know there's good policemen. So I'm not saying all it's bad. But over the 500 some people I've talked to, it seems like the general consensus is 90% is really bad out there. And their whole motive, by the way, is about money. It's a $1 trillion business. I'll get more into that. Now, it's important. As you go further south, I forgot we've had Mexico. A guy from Mexico City was looking for his kids in Louisiana. And then we have Guyana down in South America, east of Venezuela, north of Brazil, on the east coast of South America. And then across the Pacific, the land down under, we've had Australia. Several comments have come in from Australia. So it's a worldwide thing about CPS. And I welcome you all. It's important that people are helped because you aren't given a book or a manual how to fight CPS. It's a worse agency than the Internal Revenue Service, the IRS, because of the corruption that takes place in there. They are retaliated. They retaliated against my family. They've hurt my family and stole my daughter. They trafficked my daughter. They trafficked all my children when they took them, by the way. They weren't in imminent danger when they took my children. That's sad because it seems like every case when an allegation is made, they believe it's true and they automatically say that we need to take your child. Why? Not to protect them, to get money for them. It's a money-making thing. It is really, really sad. And now be complete with your question or comment. In order to do that, please tell me about your case. All I need to know is a couple things. What kind of a family structure you have? Are you husband, wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, partnership, lovers? Also, are you the same mother and father of the children, or are there different fathers and mothers involved? Are you a single parent? Also, the ages of the children, the sexes of the children. Then also the allegations in more detail than neglect or abuse. And so I can help you out there. And then how were the children taken? Did you give them up? Did they take them from you? What was the details how your children were taken? And then lastly, about where you're at on your case. So when type in a comment, you know, make sure it's about CPS, show your name and your city or county and state, or if you're from a country, you're welcome a city or the country there, and be complete with your case. Be complete with your case. Now, that is the second way of interacting with this podcast. A third way is to be a guest. And I'd love to have you as a guest. What that means is that you'll be live on a camera talking like I am, and you will be able to help others, help yourself, and talk about your case. Now, to schedule as our guest, you need to email our show producer. Her name is Grace. She works very hard behind the scenes, and I thank her for that. To email her, you would go to grace@vincentwdavis.com. That's grace@vincentwdavis.com. Now, all you have to tell her in your email what show you're on. I have 14 shows. I'm on 7 days a week, Monday through Sunday, 7 o'clock in the morning, Pacific Standard Time for an hour, and at nighttime, 7 o'clock Pacific Time, an hour in the evening, and that's for an hour. There's only one exception, as you see today. I come on at 8 o'clock in the morning because I like to have time with my family with church on Sunday. So I do the podcast early so I can be with my family. It works out nicer for people on the East Coast because you're 3 hours ahead of me, so it isn't too late to talk. So to be our guest, you just pick one of the show times, morning or evening, and then Sunday or Monday or Wednesday or Tuesday. Just tell them in your email. Send the email off. She'll get back to you. She'll give you the link. I'm broadcasting on YouTube, and I'm using the StreamYard application, and she will broadcast you that link. If you get bounced off, use that link again. It's good. That link is good, so don't throw it away. Keep it, and if you get bounced off as being our guest. Now, she'll help you to tell you what to do as our guest. Some things is we don't allow any food or smoking, including eating like nuts or candy or chewing on ice. And then also, it's important that you adjust your lighting so that we can see you and your microphone can hear you. I know you may not have a computer. A phone is acceptable. Make sure you have a good internet connection. So you hurry, and the volume is turned up so everybody can hear you. And then you adjust it with the lighting in the background. She also will talk to you about other things, like we don't use names of children, social workers, or judges on the podcast. And so that's very important that we adhere to that. There are community standards that Facebook has, and there are certain things we cannot discuss or talk on this podcast. So email Grace at vincentwdavis.com. Now, that's the third way. The fourth way is just to call in. And my phone is live, and you can call me at 626-698-0990. Now, calling in, what happens is that it goes directly to my phone. It'll ring. I'll answer it, and I'll put you on speakerphone. And you can talk about your case and help other people as well as yourself. Now, that is a direct line to my phone. Now, I use Vonage, which is the application on my phone. So if you're familiar with Vonage, it is an interbase phone application. Now, there's another number on the screen, and it's shown as 888-888-6582. That's the law offices of Vincent W. Davis and Associates. Mr. Vincent W. Davis is the owner and the lawyer who deals with dependency law, which you're caught up in. Juvenile family dependency law is the area that you want to be in. You don't want a criminal attorney. You want a family juvenile dependency attorney. Someone that has background in family law, juvenile law, and dependency law. It all goes together. And Mr. Davis, that's his expertise. Now, that number, 888-888-6582, is if you want to hire Mr. Davis as your attorney. And so you call in there and you can make arrangements to do so. But at this time, I'd like to tell you about something that I have going across the bottom of my screen. And I want to talk about my first rule. My first rule is to hire an attorney. And you probably say, well, I can't afford an attorney. Well, I've worked out something with Mr. Davis that goes like this. I'm able to have a discounted Zoom meeting with attorney Vincent Davis for 30 minutes for $60. But you need to go to the website, https://candidly, CLENDLY.com/APPTS VWD/Bob Pace. And that will take you to a web page. There you'll book a discounted Zoom meeting for a consultation with Mr. Davis. They'll take a Visa or MasterCard, and it's only $60 for 30 minutes. $60 for 30 minutes. And he will talk about your case. He'll give you, a coaching of how to navigate in CPS, because CPS is like open heart surgery. How it is that, in open heart surgery, you need a bona fide doctor. And that doctor is somebody that has gone through medical school, done an internship, passed his medical exam, got a license, and then has a mentor for many years before he starts cutting open your chest and working on your heart. Same thing goes with CPS. These people, I hate to call them, but sometimes they act like animals. They're very revengeful. You're Alice in Wonderland. You've gone into your backyard in your garden and fallen in the rabbit hole. And you met the Cheshire cat who directs you to go from one room to the next room. That's what CPS is like. You're like lost in a world of maze. You don't know what you're doing. So you need a professional attorney. And you say, wait a minute, I got an attorney. They gave me one called a court-appointed attorney. They're great. I'm not telling you not to use them. It may be the only way you can. But keep in mind that court-appointed attorney is a criminal attorney, not a dependency law attorney, has very little training, and has a caseload of 30 or more clients. So they're not going to actively fight for your case. You meet them usually on your first day of your hearing, and they'll come out the hall and talk to you for 5 minutes. In California, you're not allowed in the courtrooms. In Kentucky, you're allowed in the courtrooms. But in California, you have to sit in the hall and have to, hopefully, that your court-appointed attorney is doing his job, which they are friends of the judge, friends of the social workers, attorneys, friends of even the children have court appointed. See, what CPS is hoping that you use court-appointed attorneys with your children and yourself, because they know they can control and work with court-appointed attorneys. Their sole objective, the CPS's sole objective, is to kidnap and traffic your child into foster care. Also, they will alienate your child from you. They don't talk much about the case around the children. They keep the children in the dark about what the parents are doing. And the same thing goes for the parents. They'll keep the children in the dark too. It's sad, but they do alienation. Now, alienation is illegal, and you shouldn't have to do that. But that's how it goes. So, with a court appointed attorney, if that's the only resource you have, that's what you have to do. As far as fighting pro se, that means without a lawyer, you're going to be eaten alive, because these attorneys are good. They have trillions of dollars to work with. It's $1 trillion business, not a billion, not a million, but trillions of dollars. And example, in my case in Orange County, my children, the county was getting paid by the state, who gets its money from the federal government, $20,000 per child. That was $60,000 a month that the county was getting. And if you have 100 families with 3 children each, that's $6 million a month. That's a lot of money that they're hauling in. They give bonuses and incentives to the social workers. Bonuses, incentives. Their goal is to get your child adopted, because they get this money dribbled into the child's 18. So I'm telling you, you got to have an attorney, and think about either hiring Mr. Davis, who has 35 years in the business. He is a trial attorney. He has fought CPS and gotten children back. In fact, he's done civil lawsuits and won millions of dollars both in state and federal court against social workers that have lied or violated your constitutional or your civil rights. So he is the best. He has a case in Northern California right now, several cases in LA, one in Oklahoma. But he'll go to any state to fight your case. He'll go to any state. I had to sell my home. That's how drastic I was to get my family back together. It was hard because I worked 40 years for that home. 44 years of 60 hours a week, blood, sweat, to get my home, and it's gone. Not only is my home gone, my credit's gone. And unfortunately, one of my children was wiped out by CPS, meaning they stole my child. They did a revengeful thing, and they told her that, told us parents she'd never see her daughter again. And it came true. And our daughter was 12 years of age when all this has happened. And sadly, when the social worker was on the stand addressing the adoption of our daughter by my wife's sister and husband, which we did not want to take place, our attorney, we hired Mr. Davis. That's why I sold my home. And he questioned a social worker about the integrity of the parents. What kind of parents are these parents? Because he knew something that she didn't know. And so he asked the social worker, has there been any domestic violence? The social worker said, no domestic violence, very good parents, very loving parents, very caring parents. Well, then Vincent Davis pulled out a folder about a half-inch thick and about 30 documents in there, police reports of investigation of the domestic violence. And it was terrible domestic violence. It was heavy physical on some of the reports. The social worker looked mud on her face. She had lied. She had perjured herself. She's now open to a lawsuit of millions of dollars against her. And so she left the courtroom in tears because she was proven to be a liar. And of course, the adoption didn't go through. But the social worker revenged and said, I'll get you, Mr. and Mrs. Pace. And so she had her daughter at age 12, which is legal in California, emancipate herself from her family. That means she divorced her mother, her father, her 2 brothers, her grandparents, her aunts and uncles and cousins. The whole family wiped out. Then she changed her complete name. And not only did she change her complete name, she also sealed her birth certificate. And of course, is going to get a new birth certificate because she got adopted by a foster care family and they are put as the legal parents, which is really sad because biologically, we created that child out of love. She was very precious to us. She's 22 years now, but she still hasn't come back to us. And we just need to reach out somehow and tell her that we still love her and accept whatever she wants. We just want to be a part of her life growing up. I'm blessed to have 12 years with her. There were 12 beautiful years. There were 12 beautiful years. My daughter and I were really quite close. And so I'm trying to tell you what the social workers are like in CPS. Now, I've gone about 26 minutes. Again, my phone number's up. You can call me at 626-698-0990. The number is on the screen. And that if you also want to have a consultation with Mr. Davis, the website is on the screen. And you can go to that website and secure a consultation on Zoom with Mr. Davis. Now, Faye, I pretty much talked about the 4 ways of interacting, and I talked a little bit about my case. What would you like to talk about today? I have lots of areas we can go into. Did I lose you, Faye? Okay, Faye.
No, I'm here.
Okay, all right, okay.
I'm trying to think about.
Yeah, I know it is now. What we have topics we can talk about. I have about 15 tabs open up, or we can talk about CPS horror stories and how to answer them. Or we can talk about CPS, the kind of workers you're going to come across, things like that. Now, for some of you that may have an idea or not have idea what a social worker is, they vary from state to state, and I imagine from country to country. Some of them are educated, some of them are not. Some have clinical psychology degrees, and some of them are trained by the agencies. In California, you don't need a license to be a social worker. You don't even need a college degree or a high school diploma. Anybody that applies for it could be, and our social worker is one of them, a very young girl. I think she had a high school degree, but I wasn't sure. She didn't have to have a license, and she certainly did not take any social work. She didn't go to college. And that's dangerous. That kind of social worker really does not know how to do family reunification or the differentiate what is abuse, what is neglect. See, that's the sad part. Faye will tell you that she has a collection of 30 children's faces on tombstones that have been killed in Kentucky in the hands of the cabinet. They call their place the cabinet. And she has kept all these children, and these children are young children that were killed in the custody of the cabinet, not by the parents. In the custody means they did not have a safe environment for these children. Sometimes when children are placed in foster care, the foster care has its own children, biological children. Then they got all these adopted children that they're trying to do, and their own children hurt the foster care kids. They do bad things to them. So's the foster care parents. They will do bad things to them, and terrible things. They do incest. They do the rape and do all kinds of stuff there. And so I'm telling you all out there that it's a horrible feeling to know that your child is in somebody's hand that doesn't know or care about taking care of them, that doesn't care or take care of them. In fact, if you want to know what social workers are like, there's these 8 social workers in Prescott, Arizona. They all were white women, and collectively, totally, they had 25 years of experience in CPS. They called their CPS in Prescott, Arizona, Department of Children's Services, DCS. And what they did, I called them the Pink Ladies. Why? They went out and bought these pink T-shirts, and on the front they had stenciled professional child kidnappers. Professional child kidnappers. And on the back they said, do you know where your children are at? And they paraded around at Costco, at Walmart, Kmart, Target, Best Buys, all the big department stores in front of parents, causing shock and harm to these parents. That is wrong. That is wrong. And they did this until they were caught and they were fired. And so was the director in charge of the DCS in Prescott, Arizona. This happened in the year 2022. Look it up. You'll see it. Look it up. It's all over the internet. That is your classic social workers. And the majority of the people I've talked to here, and I'm talking over 500 people, have told me the same thing. They're evil. They lie. They retaliate. There's no transparency. There's no accountability. There isn't like a board of directors or a board of governors or anything that is a watchdog. The money comes from the federal government, shipped to the state. There's no accountability. Right now in Kentucky, in Richmond, and Faye can attest to this, there's over $1 million unaccounted for. And I rounded it off, by the way. I don't know if it's 800 now or 9, whatever it is, but it's a big chunk of money that they don't know where it got spent or how it was spent. And furthermore, a person is being investigated for embezzling funds. So there is corruption in there. If you can imagine $1 million, they can't answer where it was spent. $1 million. That is a lot of money to a lot of people that are homeless or barely have a home. I mean, Faye right now is struggling because she has to relocate because her home is being sold, the one that she rents. And so she's looking at other avenues. You know, with myself, I'm struggling too ever since I lost my job through no fault of my own at age 60 in 2010. And that's when my CPS case got started because my in-laws, my wife's mother, father, her 3 sisters, and her brother waged war for 5 years, calling in false allegations because they wanted our children. They never were supportive. We've been married for 31 years. I'm a family man. I have 6 children, 3 older ones and 3 younger ones. And the family never came to our wedding 31 years ago. Never came. And we did not know that the lay people that were calling in. You see, there's two kinds of people that call in allegations. They're your lay people, and then they're your professionals. Now, the professionals are trained about how to report neglect and abuse. They're like your firemen, your policemen, your caregivers, your doctors and nurses, your teachers and principals, that if they suspect or see abuse or neglect, they need to call it in. They're required by law. But the lay person isn't trained, isn't doing it. And a lot of the lay people, I'd say 50% of the cases called in by lay people are for retaliation or revenge against another person. They don't like the way your neighbor's yard is growing on their yard. So they'll make up a story and use CPS to hassle that neighbor, or the dog barks too loud, or they had an argument. They don't understand. They just don't. And the thing is, a lot of people go through that they did nothing wrong. My children were not in danger when they were stolen and taken and trafficked into foster care. They were not in any much imminent danger. Imminent danger is when a child is being exposed to something that can harm them physically or neglect. Like, for instance, if a child is let to wander the streets, they're in imminent danger. If a child is around the parents doing drugs, they're in imminent danger. If the parents are arguing to do domestic violence, that is imminent danger, especially if it gets physical and then the child is caught up between. Sometimes parents are angry at children and they shake a child uncontrollably, and a young child cannot be shaken. Their brain is still developing. That is wrong to shake a child. It's also wrong to slam a child against the wall, but parents do it as a form of punishment. They whack kids in the head, or they pinch kids, or use physical, using spoons or spatulas or branches from trees or belts or whips. Those are all imminent danger of children. And I want to emphasize that timeout is still, I think, the best way to handle a disciplinary problem. And it's very important that you execute timeout. Timeout is good with adults as well as with children. In fact, if you ever watch a football game or a basketball game or whatever it is, they have a thing called a timeout. And what a timeout does is everything is calm, everything's stopped, and you rethink what is happening. In football games, it's the strategy of how to win. So they take a timeout to rethink things out. In disciplinary problems, it's the same principle. They go to an area and they sit and they think. And you should do it like no more than 5 minutes. No more than 5 minutes. Then after the timeout's over, you regroup. And you ask the child, what did you do wrong that you required a timeout? Can you tell me? And you talk about it. And you make them understanding that whatever they did that was bad, that was wrong. And so the principles of timeout are really useful. As adults, if we're in anger with each other, we're arguing with each other, we're going to throw it. A good thing to do is take time out. I'm going for a walk. And you can walk in the park, you can walk at the lake, you walk at the river, you can walk at the ocean. I live at the beach, so it's easy to walk 3 blocks down, and there's a beautiful ocean and the sand and the surf, and it's really appeasing. It'll calm you down. Then after you walk, you can come back in 5 minutes and talk about it. Talk it out, or go someplace with them and talk it out. Sometimes the best thing to do is take a walk as two parents are arguing and try to resolve it. Because at one time, you parents loved each other enough to get together to have your children. I mean, there was something there that connected you. I know a lot of you, maybe it's just all sex, but I know that there's still love in people's hearts. I know that. And so I really feel that a timeout is a good instrument. So many people at work are arguing with their boss, or they're hot-tempered. They need a timeout. There's been a lot of people killed at postal places and at job places. They need a timeout. So a timeout is a useful tool, and it's something that should be used in there. Again, my phone number is up there. Please call me at 626-698-0990. If any of you like to leave emoji, please do so. You can leave hearts, and you can leave thumbs up, and you can leave smiley faces and stars. You can do stars. Make sure you check below that you subscribe to my podcast, and also if you want to get notified when my podcasts come on. Those are things that you can do there. So I've talked a little bit about my case. I've talked about one example of a social worker, actually two, because my social worker was bad when she did the revengeful thing. And we lost her daughter because of revenge. And it's so sad. Because these social workers need to be trained. They need to go to school and work in social work classes. Get a degree in social work. Maybe minor as a clinical psychiatrist. A minor in clinical psychiatry and a degree in social work would go really far. They also need a license. Now, in Kentucky, they have licenses, but I don't think they enforce it. And in California, there's a license required. I think anybody that works in CPS needs a license, and it needs to be renewed every 5 years because changes happen, and they want to keep the people up to speed and make sure they are protecting our children from neglect and abuse. And they do family reunification. Because I'm trying to tell you, the best parents are the biological parents. It's been proven studies after studies that the best parents are the biological parents. So, we need to have social workers with licenses and degrees and education and so forth. And especially if they're going to prescribe drugs or say if a parent's unfit or a child's unfit or emotional or whatever, they need to have that clinical psychiatry background to administrate the drugs and to diagnostic the parent or the child. Whereas one of their goals is to say you're mentally unfit as a parent. They want to prove that right away. And they want you to sign papers and be careful what you're signing. Be careful. Now, a plan is supposed to be an agreement between you and the social workers of what you plan to get better in your life. It should be addressing like certain parenting classes or a program such as anger management or another program for drugs or alcohol. There are programs available, and there's also parenting classes are available. And you should, that should be part of your plan. But get really careful about having your rights terminated. Never give up your medical or educational rights. Do not do so. And if you end up losing that, appeal. If you end up losing a step, appeal. Always appeal. There's ways you can appeal. There's a motion in California called the 388 motion. That same motion is in other states. But what it is if you have new evidence or if you completed some of the required parts of your plan, you can have a hearing with the judge. It's very important that you give the court, the judge, copies of everything. Not only in CPS's hands, but the judge too. There was a case where a social worker went on and said the parent didn't do this or that or whatever. The judge asked the social worker, ma'am, I have here in front of me all these classes and programs his parents done. Are you sure you're talking about the right person? Boy, that social worker was embarrassed. You got to be careful. You got to document everything. And that leads into my rule number 2, your paperwork. You need to have a notebook to organize your paperwork and document everything. It's so important. One of the most important things, get that 8.5 by 11-inch notebook with 3 rings, about 3 inches thick. And get your subject dividers and get your ream of college rule notebook paper. And that way you can write as big as so you can see it. But one of the subjects is incidents. Incidents is a timeline of your case, whether it's with your children, whether with a CPS worker or the police or your neighbor or whatever it is, anything relating to CPS, should be on that timeline, the incident report. You just put the date, the time, the location, and the people that are involved in the first line. The second line, you describe the incident. Just a simple sentence describing the incident. The third line is the outcome. If you don't need the outcome, leave it blank because you'll eventually get the outcome when you get there. Then leave a couple spaces, do the next incident. You may have 150 or 200 incidents, but you will be able to remember and look back on your notes because a year from now or 2 years from now, you won't remember. And I didn't do that. So it's so important to organize your paperwork, to have it well documented, your case. You need to document everything and refuse to sign nothing unless your attorney's told you to do so. It's really important you have your attorney involved. And if you got a court-appointed attorney, make him work. And if he doesn't work, go to the clerk for the courtrooms and ask, or excuse me, for the court-appointed attorneys. There's an office in every courthouse there. Ask for a new court-appointed attorney. It's your law. It's a civil right. You have to exercise it. Judges will say no, and they will think, if you have an incompetent judge or attorney, you can file at the judiciary, at the state level, a complaint, and you need to follow up with the complaint. I know that you can be persistent. It may take 12 years like Faye did, but she finally got a new person to talk about her case, and it's all persistent. The other day, Faye and I were wondering what to do, so we called Congress. Now, Congress is available. They have a phone number. It takes you to the switchboard operator. It is answered. They do talk. And we asked them to speak to a certain attorney. I think it was Senator Schiller. And he's a Democrat in New York. And we wanted to have help to see what direction we can go because in order to fight CPS, you're going to have to contact, you have to do a lot of politics to make changes. So I cannot emphasize the importance. Of being proactive. We need to make changes because CPS is corrupt. It is corrupt. And I like to see changes made. And it takes us joining groups and petition. I know in California and Sacramento a year ago, they had a group of people that marched on the Capitol there about how bad CPS is. But it's sometimes hot and cold. And I know it's hard, but if you stay with it and you get the proper tools, you will get your children back. You need those tools. And one of those tools is get an attorney. So as I told you in my rule number 2, it's important that you organize and document and, put a place for all your court papers, put a place for all your parenting certificates, all your drug tests, all your mental evaluations and things like that. You put it all in the notebook and you carry that with you. That is there to help you and your attorney as time goes on because it will be really hard and difficult. I know, really hard and difficult. Now, I like to go to my next rule, which is rule number 3. And my rule number 3 deals with several areas. It deals with how someone can enter your home or how they answer the door, how they can take your child or search your house, how to talk to social workers, what to say. And then there's medical trafficking. That's a part that's happening a lot lately too. Keep in mind, when a complaint is lodged, especially if it's done by a layperson, you're guilty until you're proven innocent. It's the only criminal matter that you are guilty right away. Every other criminal matter, you are not guilty until you're proven guilty. You're innocent. But in CPS, doesn't work that way. And they most likely will come to your home because their next step is to interview the family and take the child, whether they're in danger or not. So this is where you got to be careful. And I've seen too many people lately be killed by answering the door. So I recommend you do not answer the door. If someone wants to get a hold of you, they have your phone number, they'll leave a card. You maybe made special arrangements with a door knock or a door ring, but you don't want to answer the door. That can help you out a lot of things. If CPS is coming investigating, they will leave their card or they will follow up there. And if they do, then you need to contact them. You need to talk to them. You can't avoid CPS. You can't avoid the police. But the first time you can refuse to open the door. It's your constitutional right. Just be quiet. Get away from the door. Get away from the door. We had a black airman in Gainesville, Florida that was shot point blank by answering the door. He was on FaceTime with his girlfriend and they killed him. This sheriff killed him. A week later, he was fired a week later, and now he's being charged criminally. But that doesn't bring back the 23-year-old black man that had a loving mother in Alabama that was so thrilled to death that her son was doing something right by serving our country in the United States Air Force. So it is sad. That's not the only one. There's been so many people that have been killed answering the door, mistaken ID by the police. And there was another one where a lady a couple of months ago or a month ago was being interrogated by a sheriff, actually sheriff and his deputy. Two of them were there in her home. And he was being very abrasive and very kind of like strutting his chest out and being very aggressive towards his lady. And his lady was washing dishes and turned and faced him. And he took his gun out and fired 5 times in the face, killed her on the spot. That deputy that night was fired and charged with first-degree murder. That sheriff, I should say, the deputy with the sheriff is being charged a week later. And he has been fired because that was wrong. That's not how you instigate or how you use people skills to handle a volatile situation. Policemen are trained, but they're bad apples in anything. And that may have been a bad apple. But it's sad that police are trying to protect their own too. If they see something wrong, they need to speak up. They see something wrong. That case is terrible. Then there was a Korean lady recently that had mental problems, and she was killed by 2 policemen, not just 1, but 2. And they did find a knife that wasn't on her, it was nearby. But, she had problems, comprehend. You see, policemen got to learn something. I don't know what academy they go to, whatever it is. I did do some police training. As an ocean lifeguard, I had to make arrests on the beach. And I had to go to court for the arrests that I made. And I was taught about a lot of things about how to break up fights and how to talk to people. And one way is if you're going to investigate someone at the door, not only do you knock, but you identify yourself right away. You say, this is Sheriff so-and-so with what police department. I'm here to investigate domestic violence, or I'm here to investigate child abuse or child neglect. And is anybody in there? And they say yes. How many people? And you tell them, please lay down, unlock your door, lay down, face down. If you have a weapon, put it away from you so that I can see it. Put your hands behind your head. And then they can come into the door and enter. They can come in and enter. But they don't do that. Policemen also stand in front of doors and they're shot, killed. They don't know how they stand at the side of the door and crouch low and look down from below up and see what the situation is. They can come in, put the person in handcuffs, check the place for any more people, and neutralize the incident. just by saying nice words, not mean words. A lot of them are antagonistic or whatever it is. There's one policeman at the Black Man, the airman, just said, didn't say anything. He knocked a couple times and knocked again. And he gruffly said, "This is the sheriff," and didn't say what he was there for. The guy doesn't know who's at the door. The best way to do is that people behind the door don't answer the door. Don't answer the door. And if they come around a second time or you contact them, they'll have to have a warrant to get into your place. That leads me into there's only 3 ways they can come into your place. The first way is by your permission or people there in the house give them permission. And that's a bad thing. If you have family or friends, they want to open the door too, but you got to tell them not to. And that's one way they come into your place. And by you allowing them in, you've given permission. A second way is if domestic violence is going on or any kind of violence, arguments in front of the children involved, the social worker and police will come in. They will come into your place. The third way is a warrant. They have to have a court-ordered document that the CPS or the police goes to the judge, and the judge only works on working days. He does not work on holidays, does not work on the weekends. So if the dates are a holiday or a work day, a weekend, then you know that document is false. Also, the judge has to sign that document with a wet signature, and it's embossed. There's a special machine that embosses his signature, raises it up on the paper so someone couldn't make a copy or use another warrant for somebody else. They got to have who it's addressed to, the parties concerned. The children are listed. The allegations are listed. The address is listed. The date and time they can do the investigation is listed and what they can do. They can do an interview. They can do a search. They can take a child, whatever the directions are. Now, I recommend after the first time of a visit is you follow up with the attorney and call them and talk about it and use the advice of your attorney to do so. And a lot of you, if you're short on money, you may have to look at selling your assets or raising money or maybe get a small amount of money to do a partial thing with your attorney. But you're going to need somebody in there because it's a dangerous situation. If you're outside and you encounter a social worker or policeman, make sure you look at the warrant before you let them in the home. Now, you don't have to go back in the home. You don't have to surrender your children. You tell them, I need to speak to my attorney before we go any further. This is a legal matter. Your civil rights is supposed to have representation during the whole time. Representation the whole time. And so an easy way to get away from them is say, I'll get back to you. Give me your name. And make sure you get the badge number of the police because they'll lie about their name. And so will the social worker. See their ID. And make sure you get the phone number and the names of the two people. Why social workers come with police? They use intimidation. They think if you use a policeman or a policewoman in combat boots and wearing battle fatigues, they're going to make an impression. And they do. They're very intimidating. They're very intimidating when they have the flak jacket on and they have all their pistols and tasers and mace and all the different kinds of things they carry around their utility belt. But they look very intimidating. Don't be intimidated. Just be nice, pleasant to them. Say very little. Say yes, no answers. Do not divulge. I was bad. I divulged everything, and so you shouldn't do that. Now I'm going to switch over to medical trafficking. Medical trafficking is where you show up at the hospital, urgent care, or the emergency room. And when you show up, they have caseworkers, social workers that work in CPS, and they overhear something or try to take your child from you. Don't let them. They need a court warrant. If you're pregnant and you're in a birthing room, don't let them in your room. They need a court warrant. If they have a police, tell them to get out of your birthing room. Ask the hospital staff. Be aware. Stay away from people that say they're case workers or social workers, especially with the CPS. So that completes my rule number 3. I covered 1, 2, and 3. We don't have much time because I have to end the podcast. I've gone over an hour on the podcast, and I want to thank you all for all the emojis and the stars and stuff that you've done in my podcast. I hope to see you all tonight at 7 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. I want to thank Faye, who has been in my background listening to me and helped me with my show. I appreciate her here, and I appreciate all she does. And I want to thank all my other listeners out there. Some of you are silent. I know that. It is hard to talk about your case. But keep fighting for your case. God bless you all, and I'll see you